Okay, so we bowl off with cricket on this Friday. The West Indies batsman Chris Gayle has left the IPL bubble. The 42-year-old who was representing the Punjab Kings cited bubble fatigue as a reason for his departure. The IPL 2021 started in April but was halted after 29 games due to a rise in COVID cases in India. The tournament, of course, resuming on September the 19th in the UAE. Now, in a statement, Gayle, who has only played 2 matches since the IPL's resumption, had this to say. Over the last few months, I've been a part of a CWI bubble, CPL bubble, followed by the IPL bubble, and I wish to mentally recharge and refresh myself. I want to refocus on helping the West Indies in the T20 World Cup and would like to take a break in Dubai. My thanks to the Punjab Kings for giving me the time off. My wishes and hopes are with the squad always. All the very best for the games coming up. Now, the Punjab Kings head coach Anil Kumble, commenting on Gayle's decision, said this: I've played against Chris Gayle and have coached him at the Punjab Kings, and all through the years I've known him, he has always been an absolute professional, and we as a team respect his decision and desire to prepare himself for the T20 World Cup. Now, the T20 World Cup, of course, set to begin on the 17th of October. The West Indies play their first match against England on the 23rd of October. Joining us to discuss Gayle's IPL departure is international cricket commentator and SportsMax Zone analyst, a former Liverpool supporter and a huge Chris Gayle fan, Fazeer Mohammed. Faz, what's up, brother?
You've left me speechless there, Lance. On a Friday night in the Taj Mahal, if I'm speechless, something.
All right, you've made several comments in the past months about Chris Gayle and his desire to protract his career beyond 40. How does this latest story grab you?
I take the point. And by the way, just to let Georgie know that down in the Caribbean, we put our AA batteries in the fridge, not out in the sun, to get
same end product. Same end product, Faz, yes. I can vouch for what you said as well, yes.
Exactly, how close you are to the equator. But look, the thing is that you can't just look at it in isolation, even though, as I'm sure would have been commented already, you've got to respect a player's mental state. Their frame of mind, the whole bubble fatigue situation. We can't just take that lightly. For those who are looking on from a distance, again, we've commented on it. It looks like a privileged lifestyle, but can really get to you. But we can't escape the context that Chris Gayle's selection for the West Indies World T20 squad has been a source of much discussion. Much of it for, much of it against, much of it very, very emotional, much of it suggesting that Cricket West Indies are bending the rules to accommodate players. This thing about a medical exemption, both for himself and also for Ravi Rampal, and basically palming off the responsibility on the medical team. We've got no explanation for that. So it takes nothing away from the stature of a Chris Gayle. He's hugely popular all around the world. In fact, the cricketing world, the vast majority, would have been hugely disappointed to see him not in the West Indies World T20 squad. But that does not explain all of the inconsistencies that we've seen with his selection. Now that he's made this decision, he's made his statement, we have to take him at his word. But the question is, he's left the IPL bubble to go where? He's still there in Dubai, where the World T20 is going to be played. So there really isn't going to be much moving around. I suppose it's far more restricted in the IPL bubble itself. And at the end of the day, it's good PR. Whether you believe it or not, it's a good message to send to all of the detractors, all of the critics, to suggest, well, here's 42-year-old Chris Gayle willing to give up action in the IPL, even though, as you just mentioned, he's played a couple of matches, to really devote himself to the West Indies cause. And that reads well, that sounds well for a rather skeptical West Indian audience.
Yeah, can I ask you to speculate a bit, Faz? Because I want to suggest that if Chris Gayle was making a lot of runs in the IPL since his return to the game, he may not be making this decision.
I look at it another way, Lance. That even if he was scoring a ton of runs, he probably would have left anyway to re-emphasize that point about the value of playing for the West Indies. I don't think 5 years ago he would have done it. I don't think 10 years ago he would have done it, because Chris Gayle, the numbers suggest, is coming to the end of his career. He's in the twilight of his career. Whether he accepts it or not, whether his greatest fans accept it or not, the numbers tell us so. And in sport, it's about the numbers at the end of the day. And then, therefore, it's about finding some ways to recharge those batteries, whether in the sun of Dubai or in the fridge of his plush apartment, wherever it is in Dubai. The fact of the matter is that Chris Gayle wants to respond to the detractors ahead of the World T20, and he's going to find every way possible, even before he gets a bat in hand and steps onto the pitch, to make that statement.
Faz, is it just about making a statement, or do you get the sense that it has to also do with the manner in which he was handled by the Punjab Kings? Because on his own birthday, when many people expected him to suit up for the Punjab Kings, he was actually dropped.
Well, I don't know that international sport is about giving people favors on their birthday. And in fact, the Punjab Kings were making a clear statement that we are in the business of winning matches in the Indian Premier League. And if you're talking about our best available 11, Chris Gayle doesn't make it. So we all like to get carried away with all of the Instagram things and the social media things and whatever. At the end of the day, it's runs and wickets that are going to win you matches. And if you can't expect, if you don't believe in the present circumstances that Chris Gayle is going to deliver for you, whether it's his birthday, whether it's whatever, it's entirely irrelevant.
All right, so you make that point about, okay, so runs and wickets are going to get you into a team. Don't you think that it would have been smarter if he stayed for the IPL, practice as much as he could at that level, as opposed to just stepping away now to refocus? Especially because he hasn't really...
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be practicing anyway. I don't expect that he'll just be sitting around watching television or occasionally watching SportsMax to find out what people are saying about him. I think more than anything else, he really wants to focus. He is a tremendously, how should I put it? He is an individual who finds motivation when it's necessary. Let's not forget that when he was first selected for the West Indies in the Under-19 World Cup, way back in 1998, he went there with 7 other players to replace overage players and turned out to be the most successful run scorer in the entire tournament. And therefore, he is someone over the years who's found ways to respond to the critics. And yes, his numbers right now suggest that he should not have been selected for the World T20. But we discussed it when we saw that half-century against Australia and the reaction from everyone around in that West Indies squad that they want Chris Gayle in the team, whether or not his place is merited by his performance. And as I said, Mariah, that's a bigger issue about the inconsistency of Cricket West Indies via the selectors, via their medical team, and basically not answering the very obvious question as to was this a clear case of favoritism for Gayle and also, of course, for Ravi Rampal. But to answer your specific question about Gayle and his readiness, I think that Gayle has been around long enough. He's been around the planet many times playing the game. He knows what needs to be done. He also knows what message needs to be sent for those who will continue to believe that really he should not be there in the West Indies World T20 side.
And with that being said, do you get the sense that this might be his last IPL game, or is it that if he really fires for us in the World Cup, he'll think about another season?
Well, he said that he's going to play until 45 and aggravate all of the critics who want to see him go. But again, Chris Gayle is known for his bravado. Wasn't it a couple of weeks ago that he said, who's going with me to Pakistan? After what happened with the New Zealanders pulling out and then England subsequently pulling out. When in 2015 he was the captain of the West Indies team and had to return home for a family bereavement, he sent a Twitter message that he's going back on a private jet, which wasn't the case. Chris Gayle knows how to pull the audience along, how to take us for a ride, wherever that ride eventually takes us. But at the end of the day, it's about performance, because referencing that 2015 situation, he scored poorly in the first test match in Brisbane, wasted 2 reviews, and then immediately responded with a magnificent unbeaten 150 in Adelaide, and then a quick 500 right after that in Perth. So he has been known to respond to the challenge, and maybe he has just decided whether it's his last IPL tournament or not, or who knows, he has a tremendous innings or 2 in the World T20, and they come begging him back in the IPL because he's a big draw. He knows that the eyes are on him, and he intends to ensure, as best as is humanly possible, that he's going to deliver for the West Indies. Whether he does, the numbers don't suggest that he will, but you can never rule it out.
The magic leaves every elite athlete, Fazeer, and that's why those of us who are purists, we despair when our favorite athlete stays too long, because we watch the decline frame by frame like a train crash, and it makes for harrowing viewing. Could it be also another narrative that because of Gayle's lack of productivity, and perhaps it is that he is frustrated behind the scenes, and perhaps it is that that frustration has percolated into the manner in which he carries himself, and people start noticing. And Anil Kumble and others come to him and say, Chris, perhaps it is best for all concerned if you leave the bubble of the IPL, go outside, free your mind, get zoned in on the big assignment you have later this month in the World T20, and take some time, refresh, rediscover yourself, and come back. And that is what largely influenced his decision to move, because him being there was a plus and a gain for nobody, and he was frustrated not being able to contribute in the way that he's used to contributing, getting the pats on the back, getting the plaudits for big innings. The magic just wasn't there, and that the conversation was had with him, and he made that decision. What about that perspective, that narrative?
Quite possible, George, because again, it's about speculation. Remember when Virat Kohli announced that he was giving up the T20 captaincy, and everyone said, okay, that's a sensible decision. Then you got all the stories coming out about players not liking his attitude and so on. We could always speculate. We don't know what it really is. For all we know, there could have been a big cuss out between Gayle and Kumble because he wasn't picked on his birthday, and they decided to come with some lovely diplomatic statement. I'm not saying that it is. But again, when you speculate, you could go in any direction. But at the end of the day, it's whether or not the explanation that is offered is credible, whether or not the evidence or whatever little evidence we may have stands up to scrutiny. And essentially, and we always have to be very careful about this, especially in this time of COVID-19, when players talk about being fed up with the bubble.
Yeah.
It's this when players said they were fed up with the bubble and didn't want to go to Bangladesh earlier this year. And the feeling was, if the money was good to go to Australia, there would have been no...
But here's the thing. But here's the thing, my friend. You know,
sure.
we said that, you know, perhaps if he was making runs, he would still take the decision and go. I don't think that he would if he was making runs, because what better elixir for the soul than success? What better tonic for the nerves and for the body in general than to be producing and being commended for it and going into a World Cup in good form? And again, we have lived long enough and covered enough issues to know that there have been times when it's almost daggers drawn at a platform such as the cabinet of a country, the highest decision-making body, where ministers clash, and we know from people inside the room that that happened, yet the Prime Minister comes and trots out a statement that no, there were strong views expressed across the table, but there was no raising of any voices, and it was all in good spirit. The spirit of bonhomie was in the meeting, when we know that that's not quite what happened in the meeting, despite the parties who are allegedly involved reporting that it wasn't mean-spirited as we were told. So I'm saying, I'm looking at all of this, looking at Chris Gayle's pride, looking at the imperative facing Anil Kumble and company. They want to win cricket matches, and as you identified early, Chris Gayle just wasn't contributing to that now. And it wasn't that he's in a bad run of form. He's been declining. He's in the decline phase of his product life cycle. So it could very well be that for the benefit of all concerned, it was necessary for Mr. Gayle to do what he has done, and also necessary for Kumble to come and put the statement out that he has done to try to not let anyone believe that there was any falling out or any bad blood around the decision of Chris to leave this bubble.
As usual, George, your questions are often the length of a parliamentary contribution, but it's very relevant. But because the point is that, just to answer your question specifically, I wish Muhammad Ali could have retired after the rumble in the jungle in 1974, because he would have finished off on the highest of highs.
Yes.
About Chris Gayle as well. I think that if you really think about it, what better way to step away than if you're smashing hundreds and smashing them all over the park and say, you know what? West Indies cricket is more important to me now. I am walking away. What better image to send? Because so much of contemporary sport is about spin, it's about PR, it's about sending messages. And again, at the risk of sounding repetitive, we all know about the outcry in the Caribbean about what is the blatant inconsistencies that we're seeing from the West Indies selection panel in the naming of their squad for the World T20. But Gayle is a big man. He knows how to play the game and pull the strings, and this is probably all part of it.
Hear you on that. Thank you very much. We have to leave it there, Fazeer. The reason we didn't put the batteries in the fridge was because our parents would throw them away. Leave them in the sun, they'd be safe for us to use. Thank you very much. All the best to you.
Thanks for that bit of advice. I appreciate it.